Welcome to the Well Path podcast, where we sit down with experts and entrepreneurs across fitness, nutrition, mindfulness, and spirituality, offering you an inside peek at building a business and a life that is truly aligned. I'm your host, Brooke Robbins. Let's get into it. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Well Path podcast. I'm so excited and happy to be back here on the mic with you guys. If you are a longtime listener of the podcast, you've probably noticed that we've been on a bit of a hiatus. It's been a little over a month since the last episode. And there are reasons for that we're going to go into in today's episode. And today's going to really be a couple of different things. It's going to be part life update, because part of the reason why we haven't published an episode in a month is because there have been a lot of changes that I've been sort of integrating, and I'm really excited to clue you guys into some of what those are. And it's also going to be about the topic of integration versus output. And this is something I've been thinking about a lot as somebody who I would say generally operates as like an open book. It's been a learning process for me to intentionally allow myself periods of integration that are sort of isolated in a way, or allowing myself to experience and process things on my own before sharing them with others. And we're going to talk a little bit about why that's important, when that's important, and kind of get into all the things. But first and foremost, just to share a little bit on the kind of like life update side of things. So over the last month, I've been integrating lots of different changes, all of which are really exciting. I have a running joke with my friends that November hates to see me coming, because every November for the last 3 years, like November, December timeframe, I've gone through some iteration of like what I describe as a Phoenix season, where I do this massive shedding of like things that maybe were working for me but no longer feel aligned, and then kind of like start from scratch and build back up. And it can feel a little bit chaotic sometimes, but every time that I've gone through one of these periods of time, I've emerged on the other side like so much better off. And another topic that we're going to definitely cover in today's episode is this concept of letting go of good for better, and also recognizing that it's perfectly normal and actually really good to outgrow things sometimes. And we can't turn off to life. Sometimes it's like we want it to be the case that if something is good for us or is working for us at some period of time in our life, that like we can sort of shut off to it and we don't have to think about it anymore. But the reality is that while our core essence never changes, the container through which we experience and express our core essence does inevitably grow and evolve over time as we grow and evolve. And so it's really important to try not to attach ourselves to like specific identities or aspects of our lives, and be open to being honest with ourselves about where we're at, what's working, what's still relevant, what are my goals right now, and are the things that I am currently spending time and energy and effort on still actually moving the needle on the things that I say matter to me. And so I would say this kind of season of mini change, I will say it's not as dramatic as other Phoenix seasons that I've had over the last several years, but this kind of like micro season of change for me really started with a process of prioritization. And I did an episode on the power of prioritization a couple episodes back. If you missed that one, go ahead and give it a listen. But in brief, I had a realization that based on my current goals and priorities and what I'm currently trying to do in my life, there were things taking up space in my calendar and energy that were taking more than they were giving and weren't actually moving the needle on what I was trying to do. And in order to kind of come to that realization, you need to come up with some sort of a process to habitually check in with yourself, because oftentimes I think in life, we can a little bit get on autopilot and we just sort of like keep rolling. And unless you're actually taking intentional time to like step back and be like, okay, let me have just this holistic look of like my time and my calendar and my schedule and my energy, and see where my energy is pouring out into, and actually understanding like, does that align with what I say I'm trying to do right now? It can be really easy to kind of get stuck in the flow of something. So anyway, I went through sort of a mini energy audit a month or two ago and realized that there were a couple of things that were taking up a lot of time and energy that had been giving me a lot of energy back and had been helping me in certain ways, but I felt like I had sort of gotten what I needed out of them. And now the energy output and input was like no longer balanced. And one of those things was coaching. So those of you that have listened to the podcast for a while again know that I started coaching Solid Core part-time somewhere around, I went through training in January. I think I started coaching technically in like February, March. So pretty much for the entire year. And that was an experience that was so amazing and I'm so grateful for it. And becoming a fitness instructor was something that I had dreamed of doing for a very long time. And it's something that brought me so much joy, so much pride. I got to experience a new sort of version of myself and a new version of my personality. I built amazing relationships with clients. I'm super, super proud of my coaching journey and had an amazing time. However, it's a huge time commitment. And so I felt like in the first, 6, 7 months, it was kind of a new skill and I was making all these great relationships and there were so many, good things coming out of it. And I got to a point towards, the beginning of Q4 where I sort of realized, okay, this is now taking up a lot of time and it's not giving me as much as it's taking right now. And that might change again at some point in the future, but at least right now, like I need to clear this thing off of my plate to make room for other projects that are actually going to move the needle more on my vision for my life, my vision for my career, and where I'm trying to go. So that was one of the decisions that I made. Other things that have happened in the last month to catch you guys up on are I moved apartments. So you might notice that the background looks different. I'm in my new apartment. I am absolutely obsessed with my apartment. I really feel like I manifested this place, and that is a process that I will probably do an episode on and just share a couple of examples because people told me that finding something like this with all of my requirements would be impossible, but I did it and I'm here and I'm absolutely obsessed with it and I'm so happy. So that was kind of another thing that's been going on. I also spent a week in Costa Rica with the most amazing group of people. And that is also a trip that I feel like I completely manifested out of thin air. And the last thing that's sort of been a change is I've started working with women on one-on-one coaching. I'm going to talk a little bit more about what that's looked like and how that's going and all of these things. But these are things that sort of happened pretty organically and have just been really exciting. But also, of course, there's a process of sort of integrating all of these changes into my life. So I want to kind of start this episode by sharing a little bit of the updates, but also talking about my decision to not share all of these things in progress as they were happening. And I think it's really important that sometimes when something is in the nascent phases, whether it's, a project that you're working on, a new relationship, a new situation in your life, when it's really, really early on, and you start sharing it really broadly with other people, a couple of different things can happen. One, if you think of like everything is energy, so an idea or like a passion that you have for a new project, it's like this ball of energy inside of you. And when you share it like out with people, it kind of starts to lose a little bit of its luster and a little bit of its energy. And so I believe that, especially in the beginning phases, you need to really be channeling all of that energy into output, into actually like moving the needle forward, making progress on the thing. And the more that you kind of talk about it, it sort of eliminates the sparkle, if you will, from the idea or the project or like the passion that you have sort of in your belly. So that's one thing. The second thing is when you share things really early with people, you run the risk of like accidentally opinion shopping. And this is something that those of you who have been listening to the podcast know I feel really strongly about is that at the end of the day, whatever it is in your life, the answers are always within you. And as much as we all at various periods of time want to rely on other people to make decisions for us, and you may be somebody who, feels more comfortable when you feel like you have some sort of stamp of approval from somebody else, at the end of the day, you know what's best for you. And nobody else can answer that question for you. And sometimes when you share things really early before you've developed conviction in your own path, it can accidentally throw you off course if you receive a specific piece of feedback from somebody. So that's another reason why I really believe in the adage of don't talk about it until it's done. It's really best to allow certain things in your life to just kind of like marinate and evolve inside of your own brain. The third thing that can happen is it can make it harder to make gut-led decisions, because let's say you start following a specific path and then you get some sort of a download or a hit that you need to change direction. If you've already communicated the initial direction that you were moving to people, it might create this situation where you feel like you have to justify yourself, you have to over-explain yourself, and that might actually make it harder for you to do the thing that your gut and your soul is telling you to do. So, for all of these reasons, I think there are certain situations in life where it's really helpful to keep things to yourself for a period of time, like an incubation period. It doesn't have to be forever, but in the sort of early stages, the genesis stages of some sort of transformation, some sort of shift, really good to try to keep things to yourself. Try to avoid sort of oversharing about things in the very early stages of something. Now, on that note, one of the things that has been coming up for me a lot that I've been working on is embodiment. And I feel like being more embodied, and we'll talk about what that means, is a big part of what has allowed me to really like make some of these gut-led decisions, and has also opened up like really amazing opportunities and connections for me. I'm going to talk about like a little bit what I mean, but just to kind of double click on the concept of embodiment, this is something I've been working with my coach on quite a lot. And as a result of that, I've been feeling a couple of different things. One, I've been feeling super connected to my intuition. And I have a very strong intuition in general. And that has been the case for me for the last like 2 years. But I will say in the last couple of months, it has sort of like skyrocketed. And the number of sort of like intuitive downloads about like random things that I'm getting is really like unprecedented for me in my life. And I've also been experiencing what my coach and I have referred to, and I almost hesitate to share this word on the podcast because I feel like this concept can be really misunderstood in a lot of circles. But there's an element of like a Kundalini energy that's moving through my body right now. And the result of that energy has been that I have had like a surplus of energy, not to overuse that term, but even with like relatively little sleep, there's some sort of circuitry of energy, this like renewable resource of energy that's happening in my body right now that is allowing me to operate at a much higher level from an energy perspective. So I basically feel like I have an abundance of energy. And that's both like physically, like I feel like, long runs feel easy for me. I'm able to do a lot more than I usually do. And also just like mentally, I feel like I'm somebody who in my normal life up until now has really like not been able to function with less than 8 hours of sleep. And for a month or so now, I've been in this experience where I'm getting like 5-6 hours of sleep, but I'm feeling amazing and I have so much energy all day. So I think it's really interesting. And I want to share a little bit about what I think has contributed to that. With my coach, one of the things that we do together is somatic experiencing. And somatic experiencing is all about practicing cultivating an awareness of the physical sensations behind emotion without attaching narrative to it. And I think that this type of exercise is really impactful, particularly for people like me. It's very easy for me to create a narrative about things and to explain to myself why things are happening. And sometimes actually shutting that off and forcing yourself to not create a story about something and not create a narrative about it and just experience it for what it is can unlock a different level of experience. And I think can sort of like open up channels of energy that have maybe been blocked off. And I think this is part of what has been happening is I've been doing these somatic experiencing sessions once a month for the last 6 or 7 months now. And I think that's part of the reason why I am feeling this sort of like surplus and abundance of energy. I think the other reason that I'm feeling that is I have stepped into a phase of my life where I genuinely, and again, those of you who have listened to the podcast know, I've had like a really insane couple of years with changes and situations that have really forced me to choose myself and to trust myself and to develop an ironclad sense of self-trust, self-love, self-worth, and not in the like, frou-frou way, but really needing to take leaps of faith and all of that. And I thought I've gotten to a point where authenticity is my bottom line. And I kind of have just gotten to a point in my life where I realized that anything that costs me being my actual self is too expensive. And any time that any of us shrinks or shapeshifts or morphs for a period of time to fit in or to keep somebody around or whatever the case may be, it's always going to end eventually. And like no one can perform in perpetuity, right? And so I really believe that it's important just from a pragmatic perspective to actually just be yourself. And also, my experience is that when you are genuinely authentic and move from a place of you accept yourself fully, you become magnetic to people and opportunities. And that's been my experience. And I think that this kind of Kundalini-esque energy that I've been feeling in my body is also very much related to stepping into a period of my life where I truly feel from like my very core and my very root confident and self-assured in who I am and how I'm showing up in the world. And this is actually a great segue. Another update that's happened in the last month is I've started offering one-to-one coaching for women. And I share this right now because this is the primary thing that I'm working with people on is authenticity and self-trust and helping women to define their core values, understand who they are, define a vision for their lives, and then build an intrinsic sense of self-love and self-worth, self-trust, and step into that kind of like magnetic, positive, light energy that's accessible to all of us. So if that's something that sounds interesting to you, I do have some spots open for coaching for Q1. All of the information for that, you can find it at the.well.path on Instagram or on our website at thewellpath.co. You can always DM me if you're interested in one-on-one coaching. We can definitely chat about that and go a lot deeper into some of these topics. Now, the other thing I want to touch on briefly, because we are very much nearing the end of the year, is if you haven't already, I highly recommend going through some sort of 2025 year in review process. And it's really helpful to take a broad sweeping view of the last year and do a couple of things. One, pull out the highlights. You can start to see themes and patterns of the moment and experiences and opportunities that really lit you up this past year. Two, to identify core themes from the last year. And I like to think about these as like single words, but really kind of understanding if you think of your life as like a story, what was this last chapter of this past year really about if you had to encapsulate it in a single word? Three, gratitude. I think thinking about the people that have impacted you over the last year and ideally taking a moment to let them know, whether it's a text or a voice note or a call. It's a really great way to give thanks and express gratitude. And also just like deepen your connection with people that have impacted your life in a positive way this past year. It also sets a really good foundation for building a 2026 plan and vision, which is something we'll talk about in depth in the next episode, is setting your 2026 kind of goals and vision for yourself, because I want everybody who listens to this podcast to start 2026 feeling like they're on their way to their absolute best version of themselves. And I will say, back to the point of my intuition being really on spot recently, I do have this like very strong feeling that 2026 for all of us is going to be a life altering year. I just feel this energy of transformation, reinvention, rebirth, alchemizing things that have happened to fuel you to like move into a new chapter and a new era of your life. So if you're listening to this podcast, just know there's so much good energy coming for all of us in 2026. And I think taking the time at some point this week to do a little bit of a review on 2025. I personally used a guide that my friend Christina Galbato, who is amazing, also has a podcast of her own, created. I will also link that because she made it public in the show notes. It's so awesome. So whether you use that or use another template, take some time this week to just reflect on the last year, give gratitude for the things and opportunities and people that have impacted you positively, and also take a second to, acknowledge the challenges you overcame, the lessons that you learned, and all of the good things that happened to you in 2025. Because as you know, when we focus on the good gets better. The last thing I want to touch on by way of kind of like updates in this episode is I mentioned briefly that I went on this trip to Costa Rica, and I want to actually talk a little bit about that. I want to talk first and foremost about how this trip happened. And I think this is another example of the power of just like living from a place of true authenticity and honestly no longer giving a F about anything other than just like being yourself. So I met Christina at a cafe in Miami Beach a couple of months ago. And the second that we met, we kind of just hit it off. And I think that we've all had this experience. There are people that you meet that just you have like an immediate emotional resonance with. And my personal take is that a lot of that has to do with living from your authenticity. And when you're really showing up as your true self, people feel that energy, and it can be hard to articulate in words, but it's a very magnetic energy and it's a very nice energy to be around. And Christina definitely has that energy. And I think to some extent, I've cultivated that energy as well. So we had this immediate emotional resonance. We co-worked together a couple of times, and then she invited me to join a group of her friends on this trip. Now, I barely knew Christina at this point. I didn't know anybody else that was going on the trip. But as soon as she mentioned the trip to me, it was like a full body yes feeling. And this is something we haven't talked about a lot on the podcast, but some of you know that I am very into human design, and we can definitely cover that in future episodes if that would be interesting for you. Shoot me a DM or write a comment. But for me personally, especially as a generator in human design, that's my energy type. My authority, the way that I am meant to make decisions, is sacral. It's very gut driven. It's very, my immediate sort of first impulse or response to something is true for me. And it's really important for generators specifically that it's either a full body yes or a no. And the concept of like going on the trip was a full body yes from the very beginning. I've had many other travel experiences that I've like second guessed and have like waffled on. This was not one of them. As soon as it came up, I was like, yeah, I just have this like intuitive feeling like I just need to go. Again, I had no context. I had no idea who else was going. I didn't know any other names of people that were going. I had no idea. And long story short is it turned out to be like truly, and guys, I've traveled to 55 countries and I've had amazing like travel experiences. I've been very lucky in my 30 years of life to just like have some really incredible trips and life experiences. But this was truly one of the best weeks of my entire life. And there are a couple of reasons for that. One, I just love travel. So anytime I'm getting to experience a new place, it's always going to be, a fun time for me. But also the group of people that I met on this trip were just like so amazing, so incredible. And talk about like a group of people that I feel like everybody on that trip is just living from this place of like authenticity and like working on big things, furthering their own vision, very, very self aware and vulnerable. And we all got really close really quickly because everybody was willing to really share of themselves and help each other and support each other. And it was just this really, really beautiful experience of meeting a group of new people, developing close friendships in a short period of time, and experiencing like adventure and joy and exploration together. And one thing that I kind of want to talk about with you guys that came out of this trip is it's really interesting as an adult when you meet an entirely new group of people. Because when you meet a new group of people as an adult, those people that are meeting you only know this current, most recent iteration of you. They don't know the past versions. And so while other people in your life that may have known you in other phases of your life, their perception of you may be tainted a little bit or like filtered by past versions of you that have existed in the past. When you meet somebody new as an adult, they're only meeting you as this version of you. And I feel like it allows you to understand the ways in which you've grown and evolved as a person. And one piece of feedback that I got over and over and over again from people on this trip is the fact that I am extremely present. That was the word that kept coming up, is that I'm somebody who is so present, and that's an energy that's just like very, very palpable on me. And hearing that was really interesting because let me tell you, that has not always been the case for me. If you would have known me in college, if you would have known me like immediately after college, I would say like through most of my 20s, I was like the least present person I probably ever met. I was so anxious, so uptight, so stressed, honestly, all the time. And hearing that reflected back to me, not only that I am very present, but also that it was constantly reflected back to me as like the thing about me that people appreciated the most. And it was just really eye-opening to me where I was like, wow, I didn't really realize this about myself. B, thinking back, I'm like, what has been the cost of creating that level of presence? Are like all of the hardships and all of the things that I've gone through and all of the challenging things that have happened over the last several years have allowed me to be in a space where I actually can offer that level of presence to people that I spend time with. And I really believe that being fully present with somebody is the greatest gift that you can give them, your undivided time and attention, and really holding space for people, not just like letting them talk, but like really genuinely trying to understand and listening to people in a very active way. And yeah, being there with somebody fully is something that creates, I think, this like sense of warmth and comfort for people that is relatively rare, because the truth of the matter is that like all of us, we're very ambitious people. I'm sure everybody listening to this podcast, you're always like working on things, your mind is racing. And so it can be hard and it can be challenging and it can be a practice to like really allow yourself to be fully in the present moment. But a big takeaway that I had from this trip and sort of the feedback that I was getting on this is it's a skill that is challenging to cultivate, but is absolutely worth cultivating. And it'll make your life better, and you get to enjoy your connections and your experiences with people a lot more. And it's also just a really impactful on the people that you spend time with. In this next season of the podcast, we'll definitely be talking a lot more about all of these concepts: presence, why it's important and how to cultivate more of it in your life; authenticity, what it means to show up as yourself; how to identify your core values and check in with yourself to make sure that in every room that you're walking into, you're showing up as the truest version of yourself so that the right people can find you, the right opportunities can find you, and you can become a magnet to miracles in your own life. With all of that being said, that's all I have for us today. This was a little bit of a hodgepodge of an episode. We had a little bit of life updates. We had a little bit of chit chat conversation on various topics. I hope that you took something away from this episode that's useful for you. A couple of sort of closing reflections or invitations that I want to share is: one, if you haven't already, take some time before the end of the year to just do a quick 2025 year in review. And again, I'll link the template that I used. It could be something really, really short, but take a little bit of time to journal on this past year and just hold some reverence for everything that you experienced, all the lessons that you learned, things that you're proud of, the highlights. It's really, really a beautiful way to close out the year. Two, ask yourself this question this week: is there anything in my life that is calling for a little bit more integration? Is there anything in your life that you've been sort of sharing externally that is actually asking to just kind of be processed internally? And is there something you can kind of keep for yourself as the year comes to an end and you kind of get ready for the genesis of 2026? Maybe even when it comes to your 2026 planning, is there anything that you want to intentionally kind of keep a little bit close to your chest and start just honoring and holding a little bit of reverence for? And last but not least, one, if you're not already connected with us on Instagram, follow me at the.well.path. Two, DMs are always open there. If there's anything that you took away from this episode, anything you want to chat about, DM me. I love hearing from you guys. Three, if you're interested in one-to-one coaching and want to go deeper, please feel free to DM me on that as well. Like I said, I have a couple of spots left for Q1 for one-to-one. So let me know. I'm so excited to hear from you guys. I'm so happy to be here with you. And the last final update for the podcast is that we are going to be going live weekly starting in 2026. So I am really, really excited for that. You have weekly episodes coming. We're going to be moving from Wednesdays to Mondays because I want you guys to start the week strong with me. So we're going to be releasing new episodes every Monday morning in 2026. And I'm so excited. Have the best week ever, and I will see you all soon.